Hi, today I've been asked to do a small tutorial on how to use the sampler and the sequencer using the Axoloti box. So this is the Septi synth. I've already done a video on how to make this and the patches it was made for. So I'm just using this as my Axoloti box, and I'm going to use all the buttons and the functions of this selector instead of having a MIDI controller. So in this box I've got the sound coming out, a microphone plugged in, and it's plugged into my computer for the moment so that I can do the patching. So on my patcher, as I'm going to work with audio, the first thing I'm going to do is search for an audio in object, because that's where I'm going to get my sound. This is mono, and I only want to work with a mono signal for the moment. So I'm going to add the left and the right to make only one signal. Then I'm going to need an audio out object, so audio out stereo. And let's just plug all this in to make sure I have sound. So that's one, switch it on, I have sound. 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, so this works. So the first thing to do is to record this audio into a table. So this will be a table right, probably. Or record, table record, exactly. And I need to allocate this table. So I'm going to use 16B SD RAM, and this is where I'm going to choose its size. So I'm going to go for 260,000, and if I put this signal now here, I'm going to record the sound whenever I press the start button. So I'm going to record in this patch, I'm going to have 4 different sounds to be recorded. I could do more, I could do less. And as I haven't got many buttons for the buttons to record each sound or to actually play them back, I've only got 4 buttons for the whole thing. I'm going to use this multi-selector that goes from 1 to 8, and this will select which sample I'm going to record. So I'm going to go and fetch my Septi object. This is just a simple object that has my buttons here, 1, 2, 3, 4, the outlets of this, and well, if we look at it, here we go. So it's just all these buttons and things made so that I can find them quite easily. So this will be my selector. In this selector I'll want a MUX object for my sound. So I'm doing 4 different samples, so there we go. That means whatever number comes out of this outlet, so it's either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it will send it to this. It's like, sorry, I've got this object wrong. I need a demux object, which has 1 input and 4 outputs, exactly. So it's the same input, but I want to put it in different outputs. So this table we called sound 1, and sound 1. And I'm going to duplicate this, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then send it to all these. Okay, so I now need to change these names, sound 2, sound 3, and sound 4. So these are my different tables, and these are my objects that are sending the audio into these tables. 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I need a button, so I'm going to go and fetch a demux object, but this time for binary inputs. And I'm going to use my first button here as a recording object. So this is going to use the same outlet here, and this will send each of these to the start. So by only plugging in the start, if I press once this button, it's going to record it to the end of the table. That's the way I want to do it. Otherwise, I could put an inverter here and put the inversion into the stop, and that way, if I press the button, it records as long as I press, and as soon as I let go, it stops it. But I want to record everything from the time I press it. Position, we're going to leave all these empty. So this will record my sounds. I need an object to play them back. So I need a play, probably, yeah, that's it. Table play pitch. So this object goes and fetches one of these tables. So this will be sound 1 and plays it as soon as I press a button. So this will be my, let's say, last button, 4th button here. I need another MUX object for this. Input the 4th button, and this will be going out on my playing objects. So I'm not doing any sequencer or anything for the moment. This is just simple test and hope it works. And then I'm going to put all these playing objects into a 4-track mixer. So mix, there we go. So that way they're sending their sound all the time. It could go into a MUX object actually, but I want them to be able to send the sound all the time for afterwards when I'll plug in the sequencer. So this will be the start, and then I can also control the pitches and the positions. Well, that's useful. I'm going to do the pitches here on the bottom line, so that's 15, 14, 13. Oh, I know what I haven't done. These pitches can be are bipolar. All these objects of mine are unipolar, so I'm going to go to unipolar to bipolar, copy this object 4 times. There we go, and start this again. So that way the pitch is on the whole range, and I can go to outrageous extents. All these can be scaled down according to the way you want to play around with each one. And then these 4 buttons up here will be the position. So what the position is where you start reading the table. So this is quite useful for sometimes just slightly moving the position from the start can make it feel a bit alive, and then sometimes you would say something very long and you want to fetch what you're saying. So it's useful to have these on buttons. So I think this is done. I haven't wired this in. I think we can test it live. So let's first sample here, and I'm going to talk in the microphone and go ah. Okay. Okay, so this works. Let's do the second one. It's and then the third one. Oh, something's wrong. Oh, I know. Okay, off the live, I'm playing the same sample here each time. Sound 2, sound 3, sound 4. So there's no envelope and no so it's playing the whole sample each time. We'll be adding VCAs and envelopes afterwards. This is just to test it. I think this should work. Pum 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 pum. Tack 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 tack. Pum 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 pum. Let's put up the volume a bit. Okay, so, well, this works as it's supposed to work. It's not super interesting for the moment. Well, now I'm going to add the sequencer part. So the sequencer part can be very long. There's lots of ways of doing this. Let's start with an easy, simple way, one sequence. So the first thing I'm going to need is some kind of clock. So I'm going to use a square LFO. This will give me my speed, and let's use this big button of mine for the speed of my LFO. So this will be my clock, and let's put this clock into a counter. So this counter is going to transform my clocks, count them up into numbers from 1 to whatever. So let's put 16 beats, and then this counter will go into a cell. So I need cell with, there we go, something like this. Seems good. So this is a cell, 16 steps, so I've got 16 on my counter, and it's sending, it's got 4 tracks of binary information, and it's sending pulses. So this pulse will then feed an AD envelope, and then this envelope will go into a VCA, and this 4 times. So 2, 3, 4. And now each of my samplers, my sample play objects, will go into this VCA and then into the mixer. Okay, so this is done. Okay, so I've got nothing in these for the moment. Let's just put the attacks down, and I could have done just a decay with, let's do just a decay with an M input. Decay. So that way I can put a button on the decay and just have a decay and have a short or a non-envelope really. Okay, so these will be on the 4 up here. So this one comes here, this one goes here, this one goes here, and this one goes here. Okay, so I've only got this button left. That's very interesting. And here I can put my beat. So let's do a 4 on the floor, 4 on the floor. Very, very non-interesting. Okay, anyway. This is a simple beat just made by me here. Well, as you saw. Let's now, oh no, I know. This has to also send it to the triggers. So for the moment, it's either the button or the trigger. So I could get rid of the button, but there's nothing for me to play around to test it really. So, well, one, I'm going to put a button to switch on the sequencer. So that will be a MUX Objects binary. So it's either going to be sending nothing, or when I press on the button, so toggle. So a button is, as long as you keep it pressed, it will give you a 1, and then you let it go, it gives you a 0. Toggle manages to keep that information until you press again, and then it changes it to the opposite. So the third button will be my sequencer, and this will go into the selector. So normally there'll be nothing, and then when I press here, it will go to 1. There'll be the sequencer playing, and then if I press it again, it'll be nothing. So that's my sequencer, and now I have to still send these into the start objects. So let's put OR objects here, binary simple OR objects, and put it on each table play object. So this is either this one or this one. And this one is either this one or this one. And this is either this one. There's no importance of order top or bottom, it's just or. Or is a kind of way of adding binary, isn't it? It seems like an AND, but it can be confusing if you've never really thought about it. And here we go. These are probably bipolar. Anyway, let's go live. So, record first sample. Dum 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 dum. So I'm recording loads. Oh, anyway, recording loads of different things, and then with a position, I can probably go and get it. This will be. Okay, a third one. And the last one. Okay. So normally if I something didn't work. Ah, I know. Sorry. Let's go. Something wasn't working. That's what wasn't working is my preview, because it was triggering the table, but it wasn't triggering my VCA envelope. So actually, this OR must be also triggering the envelope. So that happens quite often, that you try something out, it doesn't work, and then your brain is suddenly thinking, what's happening in my patch? And then you suddenly see that, I'm sure loads of you all saw what was happening. I didn't. It took me some time. So let's go again. Pum 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 pa ka 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 pum 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 pum. Okay, so I'm adjusting the position of my start, the pitch, and this is the decay. And then the third one, I haven't done this one, have I? Okay, and then the fourth one. And then let's put the sequencer on. Oh. So this is my speed. So there you go. This is with a simple sequence. What I could do is have loads of different sequences, and then have different MUX objects, and then send the sequence that you want. So for example, let's just do 4 different, because I've got 1 button left. Let's go to the end of the buttons. Let's do 4 of these. So it's getting very messy, but you don't mind, do you? So they'll all be synchronized, and then they have to send either this one, this one, this one, or this one. So I want MUX objects, and they must be binary with 4 inputs. So I need 4 of these, 1 for each track. And instead of these going into the ORs, it will be these. And then these will be each of the sequences. I'm doing silly things here, I think. Actually, I'm not. No, this is it. 1, 1. Sorry, I'm suddenly thinking of something else and got confused. This will be the last one. Oh, shite. Sorry. And this will be this one. And then this will be this one. So these objects will respond to a signal coming in here, which will go from 1 to 4. So I need, I've got 1 button. This is a analog that goes from 0 to 64, so I have to divide 64 by 16. By 16, put that, convert to integer. This is my last button, and normally, let's just put a display object here to see what's happening. Display I. Okay, and let's make, so this one's that. Or anyway, but okay, so this is extremely messy and confusing. We don't mind. So here's my 4 beats. So can anybody see something that won't work? I can't hear you. Here we go. So ooh, something broke there. I should have done something to record the samples into memory. Would have stopped me, or at least record it into the SD card. I think SSS has made some great objects for recording tables and everything into the SD card and then loading them up. He's also made a fantastic object for the sequencer, and but I won't get into that now. So let's go. Boom. Shite, what's not working here? I'm having a problem with this button. I have to look into the hardware, so I'm replacing this button by just a four things selected for the moment, just for me to finish this tutorial. So let's go live and see what happens. So first sample here on tum 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 tum.
Tum 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 tum.
Okay, so there we go. This is very simple. I'm only using 14% of my CPU, so you can really put loads of effects on it and have fun. I wouldn't recommend doing this kind of patch with just an Axoloti. I really would recommend having a MIDI controller to have more buttons, to test out things, not to have a selector because it's not very practical actually. It's probably more fun to have different keys to record different samples. And I would recommend looking into SSS's objects for the sequencers, because he's made, there's an object called, sorry, let's stop this. There's an object called, I'll never remember. Let's just try and find it for you, because it's quite fun. Quite difficult to use when you've never used it, so you have to go onto the Axoloti forum to go and see how he did it and how you're supposed to program the different beats. But this is the object. It's called SSS Sequencer Shuffling Gate Sequencer, and it puts in tables of 64 steps, rhythms, and each has probability value. So the whites, the amount of chances of it having a beat, the light grey, the dark grey, and then the blacks always play the beat. And it's a bit complicated to do because you have to program here and then save the table, and then save the table onto your SD card. But it's really worth it because you can have some fun rhythms, and mainly that you can record, well, hundreds of them, and then have a selector to different selectors to select the sequence you want to play. It's a fun. I mean, I've never even used all these yet inputs, but it's something very useful object. Anyway, so that's the end of the tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. Sorry about the small problem about my my physical selector here that doesn't work, and hope to see you very soon. Bye.